This episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Lena Scissorhands of Infected Rain. They have a new album coming out January 7th. But if you have heard the show before, you know that we don't really talk necessarily about the record. This isn't really a normal podcast of sorts. This is kind of more of a loose conversation. And it's going to be the last of the year, too. And that always brings forth a lot of reflection. So apologies if you're here literally just to listen to my chat with Lena, which is a nice long conversation as well. Just fast forward until you find it. Full transparency, I had already recorded an intro for this, and then I kind of thought about, the last couple of days and some of the things that have been happening in my life, and been thinking about how there's kind of this bigger narrative maybe going on, with the end of the year, holidays, all that kind of stuff. We think about friends, family. We look back on a full year of our lives and, new goals we're setting for the new year. And something actually happened to me yesterday. When I'm recording this right now, it's the day after Christmas, and it's the day before my anniversary, my 6th wedding anniversary. And so this time is really interesting, with social media being what it is, and more to the point, with Facebook being what it is, you can look back and you can find, posts that you've made over the last, however many years that your Facebook goes. Oddly, I had found a post where my wife and I went to go to a bar and we're waiting for a friend of mine to show up. She was back in town from over out east, out in Florida where she was living, and was back home for the holidays. And I saw that post and I was like, oh, it's crazy. Like, I remember that day. I remember hanging out with that person. And it's kind of sad because my friend now has passed away, has been gone now, I think, for not quite a year. And it was one of those where, I was thinking about that just randomly. And then my wife and I went to the casino yesterday. And while I'm cashing out one of my tickets to get cash back, I had a gentleman poke my elbow. And he had asked me, and on my elbow, there is a tattoo of a spaceship. But the tattoo was one that my friend had. And she didn't have many. And it was one of those things that, it just kind of was a fun, quirky thing, and it kind of made me think of her as kind of such. And it always puts a smile on my face, kind of when I think about my friend. And the gentleman was like, "Is that a spaceship?" And I was like, "It is." And he goes, "You ever seen one?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Do you believe they exist?" And I thought to myself, for a second, I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to answer it, because sometimes you sadly kind of get into these weird conversations with people, and it kind of just opens a whole Pandora's box of other shit. And so I was like, well, I don't necessarily know that I believe that aliens exist, but it would be very presumptuous of me to believe that we're the only things in this world. So I believe there's something. I just don't know what it is because I haven't seen it. And then as the person walks away, they made some kind of a comment, and I couldn't quite hear all of it, but it sounded like something to the effect of, sometimes when our loved ones come back to visit us, we don't know it's them, and a lot of people think that it's aliens. And that kind of really just hit me. It was so weird and such an interesting thought that I've never thought of before. And the thing that's interesting about it is, and I've talked about it quite a bit recently, is just going through life and kind of being more present for moments to happen and being aware of what the world's kind of telling you. And for the last handful of months, the world seemingly has kind of been steering me in this weird, I don't want to call it weird, has been steering me in this, I don't want to say supernatural world, but like the kind of, this space of like tarot readings and mediums and kind of things beyond the world we see and we live in. And it was kind of interesting to have someone notice this tattoo out of all of the ones that are on me, and make that comment, and to think about how I was thinking about my friend that day. And there was actually a comment made to me a few days ago about another friend of mine who had passed away, and this person that I see somewhat sporadically, and they had made the comment that when they see me, they think of him. And so it's been very weird that I've kind of been reminded of friends who have passed, that I used to live with, that I used to see quite a bit and had relationships with. And it's weird just to kind of think of where my life has been since these things have happened, since, they have passed on, and who I've become, what they mean to me, and all these kind of things. And it's kind of fitting that these conversations kind of happened right at the end of the year where you kind of reflect on these things. But it was one where I haven't shaken it. I'm still thinking about that. The comment of sometimes those that we lost, when they come back, get mistaken for alternative life forms or whatever. It's really interesting. Kind of makes you think, what else is there? Another thing that, it was kind of fitting that, this one tattoo was pointed out and made me think of my friend. Something that I always commended her for, and always was a talking point between us when we would have conversations, was just how adventurous she was. Not afraid to challenge herself and to learn to grow in these new experiences. And if something's not necessarily working, and even if you put in a lot of time into that thing, not being afraid to bet on yourself and go for something else that means more to you. And I couldn't really help but think of that leading up to this, the end of the podcast, the 5th year of the podcast, the end of the year. I have a show that in name and in presentation, it is very much, a thing that exists and has been established. But this year I also realized that the platform that I had the podcast on wasn't really benefiting me anymore and was actually hindering my numbers. So I ended up switching platforms recently, and it was really scary because I realized I had to essentially let go of all of the accolades I had accumulated over the last 4.5, 5 years. All my numbers were gone. All the numbers of the episodes were gone. I was essentially starting over. And it's very weird to spend 5 years doing something to then have to start over. But it's in thinking about my friend Megan and thinking about how she constantly would do that it kind of takes the fear out of doing things. So I guess this has been a year of growth. This has been a year of loss, of change, of so many things. And I've just been thinking a lot about it the last couple of days, leading up to the recording of this. I know a lot of what I said doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this conversation with Lena, but I think it's kind of in the vulnerability of talking to some of these people. And then there's definitely going to be some things coming up in some episodes, starting with the one next week, where I'm kind of venturing into not being afraid to kind of really put more of myself out there. And it's one of those things I feel like maybe this is kind of one of the last turning points maybe for the show where instead of just kind of talking about bullshit here in the intro or whatever, that maybe this can also be a space for me to connect with all of you that take the time to listen, to let you all know that, you know, you're not alone, that the things that we go through are not just unique to ourselves, that others go through it, and that talking about it helps. It really does. The hardest things, talking about it helps. So with all of that said, this is my conversation with Lena, and I will talk to you all on the other side of it. Are you familiar with the band at all in any capacity? Like, do you follow the band? Are you a fan of them?
I do not follow the band. I just know of them and some of their songs.
Okay. So, long and short of it, in the last, I'll say, well, since the pandemic, really, they had written a record. Low Teens was the last record they did. It dealt a lot with, lyrically, Keith's wife having their child and having the pregnancy complications where he almost lost his child and his wife. Just that's lyrically what a lot of the record is about. These kind of coming to God moments of sorts and all that kind of stuff, obviously. And then they had worked on a new album. Pandemic happened. Then they were like, we're not going to put it out until we can tour it.
Yeah.
So they finally were able to put it out. They just started touring. This is their first tour back. They have 3 dates left, and they do an annual Christmas show, which is next week, which my wife and I are going to next Wednesday. We're leaving a little bit early to get to the show. And apparently Keith has been driving separately from the band because he found sobriety and is just kind of, you know, finding himself again. And apparently they are saying that due to Keith's mental well-being, they want him that he's not going to do these last few shows of the tour, and that they are just going to have the crowd basically sing along in his place. Keith then, as of, I don't know when, I just got a bunch of texts because they're one of my favorite bands. People are like, yo, are you seeing this? Keith's like, my brother who's in the band with me, I overheard him telling a stranger yesterday that basically there were attempts to possibly replace me. And I don't know if the goal was like forever for these 3 shows, whatever. He's saying that that it's, you know, he's the most well that he's been mentally in a long time. And there's just now all this doubt about what's going on. So now it's one of those where the band released a statement saying that, you know, Keith's, for his mental well-being, that they're going to do the last 3 shows without him. Keith's saying that he's fine and that it's, you know, that he is separating himself from alcohol and the behaviors of those who drink, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, what the fuck's going on? And now I'm just kind of like, shit, I don't know what's going to happen as a result of this and what we're walking into next week for the Christmas show. And then I just saw that apparently 68, who was on the tour with them, both of the guys in the band got COVID, so they're done with the tour, and they were playing the Christmas show. So now I don't think that's happening. So it's just a lot of like information very quickly. That's kind of crazy because it's actually something I've kind of talked a little bit about, and I guess this is as good of a segue into something I kind of wanted to talk to you about a little bit with some of the lyrics on the new record. It definitely kind of seems like, you know, a lot of people are a lot more open, you know, to talking about mental health, and I think we're all kind of understanding how important and serious it really is, and how it really affects not only us, those around us, immediate family and friends and so forth. And there's, I feel like some of that on this record, you know, something that really kind of stood out to me was Postmortem Part 1, the way you actually start the record, kind of looking over it. I kind of was fascinated by the lyrics, but I kind of was really fascinated by the idea of a post-mortem, and for those that maybe don't know, the definition is just the examining of a dead body to determine the cause of death. And I found that to kind of be so profound when looking at the lyrics, because I was like, sometimes I don't think we potentially see that when you start getting, your mental health and well-being in check, that it kind of is the death of the old you and kind of the beginning of this new you, almost kind of a chrysalis of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess let's kind of go there and kind of talk a little bit about post-mortem and kind of maybe I guess a little bit of the inspiration for the lyrics there and mental health, because it seems like they're kind of tied throughout this record.
Oh yeah. I actually, I'm happy you brought it up because it's a very complex song. In fact, it's so deep and complex that we put it in two songs, part one and part two, which is how we finish the album. And just to bring people again in that mood and in that atmosphere, right? And yeah, postmortem is actually a term also used for something you do or discuss after it happened. So not necessarily the death itself, which is absolutely the scientific meaning. You are completely right. But also it's used in the vocabulary. It's used. It's a Latin. I don't know, saying, 2 words. I think it's 2 words. We wrote it down as one, but it's used when you say, let's say something happened, a fight between a husband and wife, and then they do something post-mortem, which means after the fight, after something happened, you talk about it or you do something about it. So that's also what I tried to write about, is we do talk or we act after. And what the reason why is because we're sleepwalking. The reason is because we are not aware as people, as nation, as personalities. We are not aware of what's happening in the moment when it's happening. We are only thinking about it later, and we dwell on it later, which is a big mistake in my opinion. Obviously, we do it anyways, but I wish people were way more here, more aware of their environment, more aware of what they say. I wish people would measure every single word before they, speak it and enunciate it. I wish people would think every time they insult somebody or judge somebody or hurt somebody. I wish people think before they act instead of acting on impulse. Obviously, that's not the main theme of the lyrics. The main theme is more like this hitchhiker, this person that is constantly on a road, constantly looking for something, never happy with what he has or she has, right? In this specific content, it's a he, and never happy, so asleep and so somewhere else that it loses track of what he already achieved and he has, and it doesn't give enough credit to what he already achieved. Forgets about people that already loves him, or again her. And this is something we encounter every single day. I'm sure all of us can at least name one friend like this, at least, or a family member, or maybe that's even them. And some of us, we acknowledge it, but we don't do anything to fix it. So that's a very strong, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. That's a very strong, it's a very strong thing that actually bothers me a lot. And it breaks my heart because I had to feel that with very close people. And that's why I needed to put it down in lyrics.
I mean, a few things to what you said, and kind of, using another one of your songs and the lyrics to it to kind of why I kind of gravitated toward kind of this what I was pulling from it. Because, that's the interesting thing about music. And I I've heard this said a lot, and I don't really necessarily know that I believed it until very recently because of my own going through therapy and kind of just learning to be more accepting of what's kind of coming to me, like what the world is kind of presenting, how people are interacting with me and so forth, and kind of seeing things in a different capacity. You know, the song, and I might mispronounce the last part of it, but Everlasting Lethargy, you know, you're kind of talking, you know, the line, you know, what is wrong with the world today, you know, and the part that you're saying that it's either too fast or too delayed. It's almost like, you know, and in touring, the phrase is hurry up and wait. I have to hurry up and get there so I can wait. But I feel like so much of that applies to life.
That. Oh my God. I love that. Thank you. That's perfect.
Well, I mean, I feel like when I heard that line, that's immediately what came to my head is we are in a world, I feel like, globally, that we are in a hurry up and wait world. Hurry up for what? I don't know, but I need to get there. I need to be first, as you see on the internet, the kids. First comment. What does that do? Nothing. And there's a lot of superficial things because you're just in a hurry to get through life and get these experiences. And it's like, but what is the point? You're missing so much because you're not in the fucking moment. And, you know, and kind of going back to the first song and the lyrics, it's like, I constantly think about, you know, how we overlook you know, like a lot of times you'll set a goal and you're so worried about getting and achieving these things and the status and whatever that you forget that it's like there was a point that what you are currently doing or where you are is where you wanted to be a while back, but you're too in the fucking moment and you're not paying attention.
Enjoy
and you're
the
just
process. Yeah,
exactly.
The process is the most important, and that's what I try to write about in a lot of lyrics in this album. Not only in this album, but specifically in this album, because obviously influenced by what was happening in the world, the global, you know, depression, I guess, that too. But also my personal experiences. People are too focused to like their goal, and they are less focused on the process itself. But they don't think about the fact that, hey, what if tomorrow never comes? For one reason or another, or for you or for the world itself. Look what happened with COVID, something nobody was prepared for. You know, what if that happens? If you sit down and think, why don't you enjoy the moment? Why don't you enjoy the people that you already have in your life instead of dreaming about having this perfect human being that you think is waiting for you somewhere? Yes, obviously, if you're unhappy, of course, get out of that relationship, friendship, work, whatever it is. Get out of it, move on. Yes, however, if you're happy, if you are in a good place, don't run after something bigger because you're going to lose what you have already and you might not ever find something better. And maybe what you had was the better, but you were so busy dreaming about this perfect land, this perfect person, this perfect job, or this perfect whatever it is that you dream about, that you are like missing on what you already have. You're missing on the process. You're missing on enjoying the process, the way, like it's a whole journey. You're missing it.
Yeah. I mean, something you actually just did something I talk a lot about, you know, because having been doing this show for about 5 years now and over 300 episodes and talking to all kinds of different people, you know, the one thing you just did that I talk about that I have really learned by, you know, spending the time either talking to different people from all over the world or even having to then go back and edit, or I don't edit these anymore, I just let them exist, but is something I've taken away from talking to people who are not American, not from here in the US. When you don't know the word you're trying to say, you don't just keep rambling. You don't, because I tend to find that us as Americans are so afraid to look not smart on something or to know everything that we will just bullshit until we find the word we're looking for. And then, there it is. And it's like, stop, think about it for a second. Think about what you really want to say, how you want to convey it, and then articulate yourself. Absolutely. I have noticed that so much from the people I talk to from that are non-Americans, not from here in the US. And I'm like, that is so fucking profound, and I wish more people would do this to see and be able to pick up on other habits, good speaking habits, good communicating habits that I've noticed from talking to people. But it's so weird. And on top of that, I feel like, and I was just watching another show very recently, the Real World, I'm sorry, MTV The Challenge. So now they have it globally, so they have people from other reality shows across the world. And I was thinking, I had this epiphany yesterday as we were watching it with my wife and I was like, I wonder if they specifically grab people who are able to speak English as best as they can, so they don't have to use like the translations, the subtitles at the bottom. And I thought about how weird it is that all these other countries want, you know, America is the place of dream and opportunity and all these kind of things. But the odd thing is I don't think most of us know how to speak multiple languages to be able to communicate with other people. So why are we the best?
Well, it's not about the language itself. It's about I guess, the freedom of expressing yourself, which is very rare in the world, in different countries. It exists in other countries than America. America just so happens to be the biggest territorially, and it gives you a lot of freedom of expressing yourself as an artist and as you know, the younger generation and everything. And I know for sure, because we started the band, we started Infected Rain in the country we were born, which is Moldova. And that country is definitely not, how to say it very nicely and very like gentle. It's not a good place to start something so alternative, so unusual, and it's just not. They don't even, like, there's no opportunities even for generations and artists that are doing something more acceptable, like pop music, more acceptable for the audience, I say, right? Or like any type of artists, dancers, painters, tattoo artists, actors, you know, theater is very big in our country, like music, everything. People have to try opportunities in other countries. America so happens to have a very big show business, very big, and it's probably the biggest in the world. I don't feel super qualified to tell if it is, but I think it is. And like the movie scene, the music scene, everything, the show business is just thriving in America. So I think it's more because of that. It's not because of the language itself. It just so happens to be also the most spoken language.
I feel like the interesting thing to me, like I remember, you know, the first time here, like one of my other favorite bands is the band Him. Yeah. And I remember hearing Villa talk for the first time, but hearing him not speak in his, you know, English speaking voice, and how, because, you know, when he's talking in, you know, American press interviews, I was always like, it's again kind of slow, it's nuanced, and it was funny hearing, I think it was Finnish, and hearing him talking, boom, it was so fast, and I was like, oh, you sound totally different when you're speaking your mother language, like your mother tongue. I was like, it's so interesting when we kind of are able to see artists kind of in these different capacities, and now that the internet exists and, you know, you can find interviews from across the world on YouTube, I think it's been interesting. And sometimes, like, I don't like doing a ton of research anymore, because this isn't an interview anymore. This is more like just a conversation about whatever. And I think it's more interesting and fun for the person who's going to be, you know, listening back to this. But I like listening to the other interviews that you or someone else has done, so I can get an idea of, you know, you. And sometimes I feel like that is more of the fun thing, is when I wish I could understand, and I guess I could. My laziness is why I have not learned to speak all these other languages, but it is one of those that, like, just even sometimes the demeanor coming out of someone when they get to speak in their native tongue, it's like, oh, the cadences and the way you talk and the way you speak and the way you emote is just so interesting, how you do it when you're speaking a different, you know, language, basically. It's very interesting to see people interact and communicate, and just see how the mannerisms of people come out. It's very, very interesting as I get older to kind of notice these little things.
Yeah, that's another thing of being aware. You know, people don't think about that way. Definitely. We definitely sound different. We think different. Languages are just so complex. Some languages are more difficult than others and more rich in like the grammar, the way the grammar works, the way the vocabulary works in general. Like, you know, it's just so different. And like I know because I do the subtitles for everything that we do as a band that needs the subtitles, like tour videos or anything like that, because between us, you know, we speak Russian. So if we film some interesting footage, I do the subtitles, and sometimes it takes me forever. I even though I speak both languages pretty much at the same level, I still need to do the research to make sure I deliver that meaning, because if you translate word to word, it's not going to be the same. And that's the same with speaking, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Google Translate has definitely taught me that some things do
yeah.
not traverse the language barriers a little bit, and
Mhm.
it's interesting to see. I can't imagine coming to America or a more English speaking language, because we have so I feel like we have such nuance to words. And I mean, even just regional dialect, like, you know, I've talked about, I'm originally from the East Coast. East Coast is a whole nother beast when it
Yeah.
comes to the speaking and the language. But then you go somewhere like down south. Like I was just telling my hairstylist the other day, you know, when we were in Atlanta, you know, I had a friend and I realized you're one of the only people that's originally from here, because everyone I've met sounds like me. But you're the one of the few people that sounds like you, that has the true Southern accent. It's real thick. And the way you speak and so forth is different, and it catches some people off guard. But again, you just have to listen. And once you listen
Exactly.
and are more apt to not want to be waiting your turn to talk, I think it's crazy how much you start noticing and how much you're actually able to take in and have just a richer existence. But I think that's
and that's again, you have to be very aware and awake in order to do that, to stop yourself from interrupting, to actually notice little, you know, words or little, even sometimes the way people open their mouth, you know, like we are all so unique, and that's what makes us so awesome. You know, we are different and we are beautiful the way we are, and that's what makes us unique. We might speak the same language, we might even be the same age, we might even look the same, but when we start talking, it's our personality comes out, and we you know, and our knowledge, everything applies together. And like noticing that, that's the beauty. In fact, that's what fascinates me the most in people, is the way they carry themselves, the way they walk, talk, eat. That's the first thing I notice. I don't see the physical beauty until after, you know. So, but again, that's unfortunately not the case in the world. People pay a lot of attention of the way you look first, and then maybe they will pay attention to your character, you know, like in the way you carry yourself and the way you do things.
You know, you said something that actually I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about, if we could. You know, you're talking about being from an area where being in this band, trying to create the music that, you know, makes you feel something, that it kind of was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of stifling. Like they don't accept that. You know, I've been reading, you know, there's a lot, and I'm terrible with names. I would Google real quick, but I feel like that's just kind of rude to do that while I'm like, oh, what's the band name? But you know, we've seen a lot of instances. I think there was a band from Israel, I believe, a metal band, and they basically had to flee the country because they were doing illegal activity by basically playing in a metal band. I mean, I guess kind of my question is, like, you know, what is it like to kind of do something that just allows you to emote things inside of you and get them out and kind of in a healthy manner and articulate its art, but know that basically because of where you geographically live, it's almost kind of like I'd looked at as a negative thing, I guess. I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, but
you are, you know, obviously certain countries are more strict because they have the culture of religion way more profound, and you know, like Turkey would be maybe even, or Israel, like you said, you know. Moldova is not that big on like it's a the religion like is strong there. We have Christians and Catholic. I don't know how to say it
Catholic.
properly.
Yep.
Catholic people in Moldova and both churches. I myself have a grandmother that is super religious. However, I don't come from a religious family, and the religion itself in Moldova is not all that how to say promoted. I guess it is and it isn't at the same time. I guess only older people go to churches mainly. So that being said, in general, it's the culture. It's the culture of smaller countries, some countries of the third world, or countries that have a very poor economics, so they don't travel a lot as a nation. People just don't go out, so they don't see different. They don't know better. It's like in the beginning, obviously, I was very frustrated. I was younger and maybe not as educated even to understand that, hey, it's not their fault that they don't know. It's not their fault. Yes, it's their fault that they are ignorant, and they automatically presume that you are a bad person, or a person that's been to the jail, or a drug addict, or I don't know, a whore, I don't know, whatever. I've been called names, and nobody really knows that you are a good person that speaks multiple languages, that did finished high school and university, that earned its living since, I don't know, the age of 14 is when I started working. I'm like, all these things, nobody knows that, but they assume, because that's why, because they are not cultured enough. And the reason they're not cultured enough is not their fault, is the country's fault, is the Moldova used to be part of USSR, and USSR was a very, strict and closed type of like thing. I don't even know how to call it properly. That, didn't allow everything else from outside USSR to come in or out, just so they are unique in their ways. So our parents and grandparents grew up in that era. So that's why we can't be too harsh on them for not understanding us, for not accepting us. It's hard, but we have to try to think about that every time when we get, they point fingers at us, or don't accept us, or call us names. It is what it is. But when it comes to music itself and art in any type of generation, any type of artists in the newer generation, unfortunately in Moldova there's just no opportunities. It's here, it's a different aspect. It's the aspect of how poor the country is. And because of that, there are zero opportunities for artists, because there are opportunities for normal jobs like being a doctor, a teacher, all the normal jobs, a lawyer, all those things. But everything that is a little bit different, it's hard. And that's the reason why not many bands make it. Not many bands really stick around for enough time to actually tour more and spread the word more, because it's it's a tiny country. You have to tour outside. You can't, how many shows do you think a year you can play in such a small country? People are going to be sick of you very fast, and they're going to be like, oh, again, these guys again.
Yeah.
That. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to go outside, and the more you go outside and the more you tour, the more you see the world, the more you learn, and the more it makes your personality, and you slowly become this unique person that is not accepted anymore in that country. But I gotta say, time passes and people travel more. The travel restrictions get go down more and more, and there's less and less travel restrictions with years. We used to need visas even to go to Romania years ago. We were not able to go to any European country without a specific permission from the embassy for each single country.
Right.
Which is crazy, and that's pretty much when we started. It was insanely difficult to tour, but we were touring. We did our best to do something at least. Sooner or later that went down, and it's not there anymore. So it's easier to travel. It's easier to see the world. And I can tell that there is a big difference. Like when I go and visit or go back to Moldova to work with my band, I see more open-minded people, but it's only the newer generations. The older people are still very judgmental, like for example, one of my favorite things to do in my country is to go to this farmers market to buy local, food, fruits and vegetables. I am vegan, and Moldova is insanely good for fruits and vegetables. It has the best soil for it, very fertile, and the fruits and vegetables just taste like nothing I've tried in the world. So it's very clean. The actual like grandmothers, they go there and they sell whatever grows in their garden. They really do, because they don't have enough money to survive, and that's what they do. It's one of my favorite things to do, but at the same time is the most challenging thing to do for me because of the way I look. I go there and all these grandmothers, they point finger at me and they call me names, although I could possibly buy everything you're selling if you were less mean to me. You know what I mean? So it's extremely challenging to me to do that, even though it's my favorite thing to do.
It's really interesting. You kind of bring up, this is the second or third time you've kind of brought up being judged based on outward appearances. And it's not really something I've talked about on the show, but for those that'll eventually see this, it's like, I know both you and I are very heavily tattooed, and it is absolutely wild to me that some of the most horrendous shit I've ever had said to my face is usually by older people.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's when I'm working. Like when I'm working somewhere, like in the customer service field, when I used to work in retail and food.
Yeah.
And like I had a lady during the Christmas time, which is why I don't really like holidays, because it reminds me of the worst that I see in most everyone when it's supposed to be a time of, thanks and family and community and and all these things that are supposed to be joyous, and it's not. And one of the two of the most wildest things I've ever had someone say to me while I'm working, one of which was this lady, she probably had to be about 80 something, was like, "Do you have parents?" And I was kind of caught off guard, and in my head I'm trying to very quickly go like, okay, where are you going with this so I can try to get the answer you want or whatever. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously I have parents. And she goes, well, you must not have parents who care, because parents who care don't let their children grow up to look like you. And I was just like, and at the time I didn't have nearly as much shit as I do now, let alone on my neck or anything. So it was one of those where I was just like,
you have a good day too, lady.
Yeah. And that was kind of it. And I was just like, all right, like whatever. And
in fact, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's regarding this specific situation. A lot of people think that the reason we tattoo ourselves or modify our body is because we want to go against our parents, or we don't have loving parents, and a good parent would keep that under control. And it's actually vice versa if you think about it. A good parent will be there for you, support you, and see you, not what you're wearing, not what you have on your body. What we do with our body is representing the alternative thinking, the artists in us, in whatever way, but who we are inside is the most important. And a good supportive parent will see that and understand that. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, because it's definitely something I've been through.
I think it's just kind of interesting because having had people say things like that to me, like the one thing very much similar to what you said is I was, I remember telling someone, because they had asked me like about, as I'm sure you get the thing too, where the meme that was like, tattoos are a great talking point to meet strangers, which is why I regret ever getting one. Because people, I'm sure it's worse. Probably I see it a lot worse with women, absolutely, where the people who just grab your arms and start touching you and shit, and you're just like, I didn't give you permission to just start touching my body. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things that a friend and I did was we just start touching someone's cheek like that. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I just thought we were invading each other's personal space. So, if you're going to grab my fucking arm, I'm going to touch your face. Don't like it so much, do you? Please stop.
Exactly. And a lot of people do that with my hair. Oh my God. And it gives me almost anxiety, because I do have a little bit of social anxiety in general. So like, it's like pretty tricky for me to like, in general, be in environments that have a lot of like strangers, even like grocery shopping, I'm always like secluded, the hood on, or music in my ears. I don't know, I just have that. And it's not because I hate people, but it's because people tend to do these stupid things, and you're like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
excuse me. I even have a service animal. She is the
Oh,
cutest. She is the cutest.
is she around
And
right now?
she is sleeping right
Oh,
there. She is a mini schnauzer. She's extremely cute, but she is very good at her job when I take her with me. But people don't understand, even though it's written everywhere that she's a service animal, they will like invade my space to touch my dog or to touch me. And I'm like, what the hell? Your eye starts twitching, and you try nicely to tell them that, hey, you're supposed to ask me before touching my dog,
yeah.
or before you touch me or something, like. And sometimes they do that in elevators where you're like, you can't even go away. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
understand that.
It's very weird. It was this is again another story I don't think I've ever told on the podcast, but it was something that was so profound of an experience for me that it kind of made me realize how women probably are just anywhere they go. In the city I grew up in, we had like one gay bar, and so like all my friends would and I would go because it was just a great bar.
Yeah.
Shuffleboard, pool tables, whatever, good fucking time.
Yeah.
And I remember this one dude just kind of being very handsy with me, and I was like, and he kept buying me drinks, and I was like, just because you don't have to buy me a drink. And I go, and then after more drinks are bought, I was like, by the way, just because you keep buying me drinks, like, I'm not gonna hook up with you. Like, not gay, that's fine, but like, I'm having fun talking to you, but like, it's not going any further than this, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
And then he got real handsy with me, and I was like, please don't touch me. Like, I've been pretty polite. You buying me drinks doesn't mean you get to just touch me. It doesn't give you random permission. You didn't buy a like ticket to the ride or whatever. And then he threw a drink in my face and called me a fucking tease. And I was like, I'm a tease because I've told you the whole time that I'm not interested. And the whole time, very vocal about it, like just being very transparent. And it was one of the first times I was like, this is probably what women feel like everywhere they fucking go.
Absolutely.
Like, I said no. Just because you bought me something, even after I said you don't have to, like, you're just not fucking listening to me.
Yeah, and it's not even about how pretty the woman is, or how old the woman is, or if you buy her drinks or not. It's not even that. It's just it really is everywhere. We embrace it as women. We embrace it. Certain things are very flattering, obviously, to get a compliment or here and there. But just like you said, some people don't know where the limit is. The fact that I don't wear a ring might not mean that I'm not married, or the fact that I'm here alone might not mean that I am single, or even if I am single might not mean that I really enjoy your company or anything like that. So it's really out there, and it's an interesting point that you bring up, because I don't think many male felt that on their own skin like you just did.
Yeah, and I learned that at like 21. I'm 37 now, so it was something in the very beginning of my bar going experiences of like, oh, this kind of sucks. And then now, like, I work at door at a bar, and not to toot my own horn, but it was like a thing where I've gotten compliments because I'll go to women and be like, hey, I know this guy seems like it's not like the body language shows me that it doesn't seem like you're into whatever's going on. Is this person buying you drinks? Yes. Do you feel comfortable with them getting you the drinks? I don't know. I'm going to go tell my bartenders that they're going to bring you those drinks that they're making. Like just little things like that, where it's like, I'm going to try to like look out for you. But it's weird that when in all the chaos of everyone drinking the loud bar music and just loud talking, that it's wild when you just literally are sitting stationary and just watching everything that's happening. You're like, man, there's a lot of like, just the body language you can see. It's like, it's so obvious if it's so obvious if you pay attention to the nonverbals, but so many people just overlook it.
Yes, I used to be a bartender as well for 3 years. So I do know. I worked in a nightclub with like a lot of loud music and cocktails and many things going on, fire drinks and everything, a very wild bar. I picked that as a second job because we were actually trying to put together money to record the first record. So I picked it up as a second job, and I ended up working it for 3 years there. So I've seen that with women and men a lot.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry.
Yeah, it is for sure. But getting back into the way you look, you know what's crazier to me is that some interviewers give me that question on how did your parents react when you started getting tattooed? Seriously? You have nothing else to ask me? You're gonna ask me that? Okay.
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't get asked those. I don't get asked questions like that on this, but I do get sometimes what I perceive to be equally cringy questions. Like when I used to have piercings, I used to have a lot of people be like, women come up to me like, oh, so it was like, how many piercings do you have? What do you have pierced? And I'm like, that's a really inappropriate question. And if it were the opposite way, that would not be me to ask you. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm also going to say like, it's not appropriate for you to ask me. Like, especially not the first thing you're literally asking me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So
I agree with you. I
will ask this. I saw on your Instagram, like I said, when I was kind of just looking for different stuff to kind of see, maybe talking points of something you've gone through. I saw, interestingly enough, you went to High Voltage, which is now closed. Yes. Moving closer to here, actually in Michigan. I think she's going to open another one in Indiana, I think is where she lives now, or Indianapolis. Because I love going and getting tattooed when I go travel. So like a lot of the stuff like down my arm right here is all the places I've been. I get a little keepsake. Right. Do you do things like that as kind of a reminder of where you've been or places?
No, unfortunately, it's just every time we travel so much and we tour, it's just impossible to find time for that, because for the majority of tattoos that you have to get an appointment. Not many shops take walk-ins, and not many shops are really all that close to the venue. Sometimes you barely have time to get ready before the show because you've been on the road so much. So Unfortunately, time is not on our side when we travel. I did, however, get a couple during just little things during touring, but I don't prefer it, no, because it's not my favorite thing to have the whole healing process while I'm working, because on tour I am working, it's my job, and it's not my favorite to be on stage like that. It gives you that tattoo fever, and it's not my favorite. I want to feel 100%, you know what I mean? So I prefer getting tattooed when I'm at home. I prefer getting tattooed when I have less things to do. I make appointments in advance with my favorite artists here, and I make sure I do everything before, like the from my to-do list of things to do, and then so I can take like a day or two completely off to just like, because my sessions are so big. I forgot when I had a super small session, like with like an hour or two. So it kicks your ass. It's painful.
It does. It's funny. Like I was just talking with like one of my tattoo artists that's doing a portrait leg sleeve I have, and we're about at the point now where it's like the kneecap, the surrounding part of the knee, the inner part of the thigh, and kind of like right up on the other side. Like most everything's, it's all the shit spots really at this point.
Yeah.
And so it was like one of those, like as we were talking, I'm like, man, I'm sorry, I'm like bitching out on some of these things, or like that I'm tapping out 5 hours in. And he goes, 5 hours and you're almost 40 and you've been doing this for a long time. Like there are people who, like, as we get older, like your skin just changes. It's you're not as young as you used to be, to where you can sit there and go for the 8-9 hours or whatever and just be like bounce back the next day. He goes, it fucking sucks. And he was like, so it's one of those, like, you say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm only able to sit 5 hours for this, or I'm kind of being antsy at the end of this, and it's like, it's still better than some people. And it's and I think that's I think one of the things to me, like I remember when I'm terrible, it's like, so when I got this done, this is like 5 hours, like back behind my ear, down like onto my collarbone.
The neck is sensitive.
It fucking sucked.
The whole back of my neck is tattooed, and it goes up to my skull. Half of my head is shaved, and I remember doing that, and I didn't even expect it to be so painful. Like the hairline, and then where the hair grows, and the neck itself is a more sensitive area that many people think. So yeah.
But I remember 15 minutes in, I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. And then it was weird. Like I had this kind of epiphany of like, if you get heavily tattooed and you're kind of just into collecting and getting more and more stuff done, then it's almost like kind of going through the stages of like grief, kind of like there's the denial. Like you're like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
And then there's like bargaining where you're like, okay, if I can get through like the
got
next
this.
20 minutes, then I can get a
Yeah.
break or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's the acceptance. And then there's when you're all done with it and you're like, all right, that wasn't so bad. But it's weird how like I had that epiphany, like spending 5 hours with like someone like with their hand in my neck and just like, I don't even know if I can breathe because I don't know if it's going to affect the area that's being tattooed, but it is just it's a very cathartic process. And I almost feel like it's one of those where I feel like those of us who kind of go through the process of getting heavily tattooed and in some of the worst spots, then I kind of wonder, you know, we call it ink therapy. I don't call it this. I think it's kind of a tacky name, but you know, some people call it ink therapy or whatever. And I do feel like for me, since a lot of the people I have tattoo me are friends and we have really great conversations during that, it is kind of a form of therapy where you're almost kind of expelling something in the process, and the pain kind of is whatever maybe you're holding on to on a maybe spiritual level or something, because it's the big basis of tattooing as the art form. That's sort of what it was about, was kind of earning and kind of more religious tie-ins and so forth. So I do feel like there is something there on a spiritual level that I think a lot of us kind of go through if you respect the art and kind of get, you know, bigger pieces and so forth, and what it kind of teaches you. And but I don't know if you have someone right after me. I know I had until 3:30, so I don't know if I got to wrap this up like right now.
No, I have some time. I have a little bit of time. My next one is not until 30 minutes.
Okay, I just want. I'm very cognizant of time because I don't like taking.
No, I am so sorry. Actually, the one before you took longer. So
no, it's fine. I totally understand how these things happen. But like I said, I just hate being the result of something like that happening. So, you know, kind of segueing a little bit off of tattooing, just because sometimes, as much as I love talking about it and just love even like inside tattoos, like, you know, joke tattoos you get with friends or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that for those that maybe don't have them, it kind of becomes that thing where they're like, yeah, cool. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, kind of, this is such a weird question, but when you were talking about having, you know, your service animal, one of the biggest things about touring that I feel like I just would find it so hard, you know, as someone who has, you know, an animal as well. And like, it's like every day, it's like one of my best friends. I just can't imagine like touring and not being able. Are you able to take your dog with you? Yes, because of the service animal thing. Okay.
Yes. So my dog is going to be 3 years old in February, and basically, the time when she got into my life was the year prior to the pandemic, and I only had technically 2 tours before the pandemic happened. And between like the time I got the dog and then the pandemic happened. So 2 tours where I didn't bring my dog with me. I didn't even know about the whole idea and everything that's behind having a service animal. Because I mean, I just never studied it. I never needed it. It is what it is. But something really drastic happened to my life and to me specifically in 2019, which was exactly a couple of months after I got the dog. And I was on tour. It happened while I was on that first tour. After I got her, it happened. So I had to deal with it while working, while being on the other part of the planet from where I live. It wasn't easy on me. It still isn't. I'm still dealing with it, honestly, to be like fully honest. It takes a lot of time to deal with certain things. But when I came back and I was like kind of putting my life together and trying to live again, I realized that I need therapy. So I was first talking to some friends that are a little bit in the, you know, I wouldn't say in the industry, but they are aware about all the psychiatrists and therapists in general. Like I have a couple of friends from my country that are studying the matter, and they were like just telling me what type of therapy, in their opinion, I have to try, right? I read a lot of books on it and everything, but it wasn't enough. And then I went to my second tour and I asked my best friends to look after my dog. they absolutely love my dog, and they have kids. So I knew she's in a very good place. She has a lot of backyard to run around and kids to love on her. So it was awesome, right? And my dog, even before she became a service animal, she was a very aware and a very fast learning dog. I didn't have many animals growing up. I only had one dog really for years, and then like a couple of cats. But so I don't know. In my opinion, dogs are way more like, they don't pay as much attention. They're just playful and stuff like that. But I was wrong, because I wasn't around too many dogs. So, but this specific breed, or maybe this specific dog, just she blows my mind every day. Like, she is so focused. She's so here. And I actually learned from her a lot too. And she was there. And that tour was very difficult for me because of what I was going through, and not having, my best friend and like this little creature that loves you no matter what. It was very difficult on me. And then when I came back, that's when the reality hit me the most, because I was going through a divorce, and it wasn't easy on me for many reasons, many aspects. Although I did accept the reality, and I was just going through it. It's a process. Yes, she was there for me, and I realized that it was difficult for me to even go out without her. But still, I'd never thought about really that she could be with me all the time. I didn't know it was possible, honestly, because, as I said, I'm not from this country. This country gives you certain possibilities that are not all that common in other countries. Service animals are only common for blind people in our country, for example.
Right.
They don't understand that a mental illness or a mental situation, I don't know, mental state could be sometimes worse than a physical disability. They don't understand that as much. Some do, but not everybody, in order to accept this as a legal thing. In fact, I can't, when I travel with my dog in my country, I can't go to any grocery stores or even restaurants unless they have outdoor sitting and have my dog with me. It's challenging. I can't do that. They don't accept it. But anyways, that being said, going back to it, I did have therapy because, again, what I was going through kicked my ass really bad. And that's the first thing that the therapist actually brought up was, hey, in order for you to function as a human being in a society, you might want to consider to have your dog with you all the time. And I was like, how do I do that? And he's like, well, there are specific schools for that, but I will talk to my colleagues. And we actually had a conference call with a couple of therapists. And because of my job and what I do and how I put my emotions on the paper and how I go through them so much every single time I'm on stage, they all agreed that I need a service animal. And they, what they do, the process behind it is that they give you this specific letter. It works almost like a prescription when you buy a medicine. It's almost like a specific prescription from your therapist that you take to a specific school that trains service animals. And you go through that training, which is absolutely necessary. It's insanely necessary for both the dog and the owner. And it gives you the opportunity to bond on a different level and to understand each other on a different level. And that's what we did. And that's something I was able to do also thanks to COVID, because I wasn't touring. And yeah, so that's what we did, a year and a half of schooling. And now my baby is always with me.
I think something that's been interesting, and I just recorded the intro and outro for an episode that's dropping this week for the show. And it's with a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in a little while, just because he's a studio musician now and is now the drummer for the band Train. So his life out in LA is just fucking busy. And I made the comment during our chat, it's like we haven't talked in a while because I just have this weird thing where I always feel like I'm bothering people. Like, even if I just send a text or we had talked about doing this, and then I always feel like it's somehow betraying a friendship because I'm like, well, what can I get from it? And the interesting thing was and as people who will listen to this potentially, they'll have already heard me blabber on for 9 minutes about it, but it was something where I said it's interesting that my same thing that I had to work through in therapy is also the same thing I have to do with my friend, like my personal relationships, where I feel like for some reason, because of, and kind of going back, as you were saying, actually, it's very symbiotic that you brought this up, because I think because of my age and when I grew up, you know, it was a lot of, you don't, like, if you're having a bad day, oh, just, you know, tough through it, get through it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get through it. Or if you did something and it was constantly, you know, I got an A on this in this class. Well, you didn't get an A plus. And it's one of those things where it's like, I understand that the sentiment behind it is you can do better. Don't be complacent. I understand that that's supposed to be a good thing. It's supposed to instill in you the drive and work ethic to not be complacent. However, when you're growing up, and now that I have the mental capacity to understand this and work my way through it, it's like, but it's also kind of had the adverse reaction to me where it's like, I then at times don't feel like I deserve things either, because I see someone else, I'm like, well, they are the A plus student in a shitty analogy. But it's funny though that I feel like in talking more about therapy with people and talking about learning how to find yourself and how to be happy with yourself on this show, I feel like it is a greater service. You know, something my dad actually said that was really profound one day, and I kind of was like stuck with me, and I was like, wow, you know, he made the comment, you know, it was like, well, you know, I started listening to some of your episodes and it's really interesting to hear you talk, you know, like as someone that I know, but we don't have these conversations. So it's interesting to hear you have these conversations. What do you feel like what do you do with this platform you've been building? And I was like, the fuck do you mean a platform? I was like, dude, like maybe 400 people listen to every episode. That's not a platform. And he was like, well, I mean, if 400 people showed up in your house or whatever, like if you were a band and 400 people showed up, like that'd be a pretty kick-ass show. And I was like,
yeah, he's right.
Yeah. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, fuck, I guess maybe I should talk about at times something else a little bit more bigger than just, so you put out a new record and how are you looking for, what song are you excited to play live? And, you know, all these remedial questions. But since going to therapy and just kind of being more of this being a conversation, I feel like I get so much more out of this. For me, like I haven't done one of these in 3 weeks and it feels like I haven't gone to therapy. And it's very weird how doing the intro for that thing kind of was almost this weird therapy thing for me where I was like, I guess I suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome for some reason. I don't feel like I belong in this world that I've kind of somehow navigated and found myself in. But I feel like through talking to people like yourself and everyone else, I feel like we all don't feel like we belong. And that's kind of the weird bond we all have.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
It is weird, but it's very true, and it's cathartic. Just like you said, just like for me with the music, you know, I have this conversation with my mom as well. You know, my mom doesn't speak English, so she doesn't really understand what I write about. Sometimes she asks me, especially if it's a song, you know, that she saw the music video for. But I do have a song called "Orphan Soul" that talks about family. And even if you don't know the words and you just look at the music video, it's very obvious. And my mom was very sad about it. You know, she was like, why do you have to dwell on your past? Why do you have to sing about it? It's the past. It's not who you are, blah, 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 right? And she's right. However, I had to bring her attention to the fact that we are who we are because of our past. And I accept it, I embrace it, and the fact that I sing about it actually helps me go through life, and it's therapeutic for me. And it's painful. I still cry sometimes when singing that song or another song that has such painful, you know, beginning or reason or whatever. But when you do so, it cleans you. It's very important for me, and that's what keeps me sane. And I had to teach her that. I had to like bring her attention to this other aspect of the pain, you know? because my mom is very dear to me, but obviously we have a big difference in age and the way we grew up, and everything is very different. You know, she's not into metal at all, but she supports the band very much. She knows how much it means to me. She comes to the shows and stuff. But yeah, she is sometimes curious. Why do I have to scream instead of singing? You know what I mean? And I have to explain to her, Mom, it's just another way of singing, and it's another way of expressing my emotions. It's just a different genre. And then they see that part, and, you know, obviously, and how therapeutic that is and how important that is for us to, even if it's a topic that actually hurts, you know. But a lot of people on this planet have the belief that it's better to forget about your pain and just close that door and never open it. I am part of the people that believe that don't bottle shit in. Don't close that door. Let it open. Embrace what you've been through. Because it's going to build up. You're going to explode. It's going to be worse when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you are depressed, or you think of suicide, or no shit. You've been emotionless and not talking about your pain and not embrace it. People do not accept the fact that it's okay not to be okay. If we're going through something, take that time off. It's okay not to be okay. That will be better for you later, and you're going to be stronger than you've been like, I got this shit. I'll close this door, whatever. I'm invincible, and this shit didn't even touch me. Oh, yeah? Okay, let's talk in a month or a year or 10 years. Let's see how that didn't touch you.
Well, I think that was kind of one of the interesting things for therapy for me was like part of it was it's so weird. I shouldn't actually, weird is a bad word. I feel like weird is a bad word to describe going to therapy because I feel like it's so transformative. At least it was for me. And it was a very quick thing. Like, thankfully, a lot of the things I had to deal with were, I would say, surface level things, but a lot of it was being in my own head about stuff. Cognitive behavioral therapy is what I really went for. But it was one of those things like, you know, she was like, well, you're solving all these problems that don't fucking exist. Like you're looking at this one problem, but then you're feeding it all these other things. And in one of the pieces of homework I had, it was a cog. So here's the middle wheel. And then you were supposed to write a problem. And then like there was 7 branching cogs. I looked at that and immediately was like, oh fuck, I get it. Like if I don't think about these other things, the one doesn't turn all the rest.
Yeah.
Totally get it. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was funny going through with like the homework, you know, like as I said earlier about how something I've learned from doing this and talking to people that English may not be their first language is to stop, think, and articulate. So say with my therapy, like, you know, I had access to a therapist thanks to the pandemic, you know, things like BetterHelp, where you can do therapy very much like this, sitting in your own home in the comfort of your own home and just kind of talk your way through things. It was really interesting to see how I could have access to her whenever I wanted. But I felt like that was almost a crutch. And so a lot of times what I would do is we'd have our session, we'd do it again the next week. And in that week, I would just see how what we've talked about correlates in my life, how it presents itself. Being present for not thinking about a million other things at once, but being and focusing on what's literally in front of me. And it's so weird when you kind of get that one tool, how it has just changed my life ever since. Like I had my car broke down literally in the middle of like one of the busiest roads here in town. And normal me would have been like, okay, so what's wrong with my car? Do I have the money to, like, I would have thought of a million things. And I just stop for a second and I go, what can I do right now? What information do I have? I go, my car's not working. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to get someone behind me so at least traffic doesn't come and just slam into me. Cops are literally, police station's right next door to me. I'm not going to call 911 because I can just call them. So I called them, someone came and I go, next I need to call a tow person. Then I need to call my wife. And then from there, like, I'll deal with shit as it goes. And it's so crazy that even in the chaos of what was literally happening to me right then and there, I was able to kind of be in the eye of the storm and just kind of deal with the shit. And then it wasn't so bad.
Exactly. That's
so weird how
amazing.
you can
Thank you
do
for
that.
bringing this story up. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And it's that to me is what therapy for me has really taught me to do is even in the middle of the shit, just focus on you, what you can handle, and you'll be very surprised at how you are able to work your way through seemingly horrible things.
Absolutely.
And I know that's a very broad statement. Like if you
No,
have deeper things that are there, I'm
yeah.
sure it's going to take more time. But at the
But
core
it's
of it,
all
that's
in
really what
our
it is.
hands. It's
Yes.
our happiness and unhappiness. It's in our hands.
Absolutely.
We are more capable than we think we are, and I tell that even to my friends. I have, all the time being like, don't overthink. Think about what is in your power, and everything else that doesn't depend on you, let it go. And think about now. Don't think about things that don't depend on you, because you will only get overwhelmed, overworked, burned out for no reason, because this shit doesn't even depend on you. And trust me, I learned that in a very hard way. I learned that with my musicians from Infected Rain in the beginning of our career. For the first years, whenever we were on tour or anything like that, I was all over the place. I thought that everything, I can control everything, or I can be in charge of everything. Although I am not a person that loves to be in charge. I actually prefer somebody else to take care of me. But I just so happened to be the oldest in the family, and I had to always kind of take care of my sisters, help my mom, and I always been like that. And the band, I'm the one of the original band members, and if I didn't do certain things, especially in the beginning of the career, nobody else would have done it. So I felt like everything is on me, right? But as time was passing, my musicians, my boys, they learned how to do certain things and how to deal with certain things, even if they are above their pay grade. So we had fights. We had serious fights when they were like, don't go do your thing, let us deal with this, or stuff like that. And I would be like, I just want to help. I didn't mean to make you feel incompetent. I didn't mean to make you feel weird. I just wanted to help. But I was doing worse. And that help wasn't needed. It wasn't appreciated. It was hated. They were hating on me. It was pure hate. I'm telling you. I went through times where I didn't talk with certain members of my band because of that. But then I realized it is kind of my fault. Yes, they could have been more gentle with me. Yes, they could have. But it is kind of my fault. So I worked on that, and I still work on that, because we are all, as I said, we are human beings and we make mistakes. No matter how much we study, learn, read, we still make mistakes. It's in our habit. But if we stop for a moment, and just like you in your situation with the car situation, and you're like, okay, what can I do now before I panic? What can I do? So that's how I started working. In fact, this is how I function. If something happens to me, I sit down, I solve the situation first, or as much as I can, and only then it actually catches up to me, and then I start either crying, panicking, or having nightmares. This is the way I work. And that's something I can't control yet all that much, but maybe it's better like that, because I learn also to let it happen. If it catches to me, if I'm sad, depressed, if I want to cry, if I want to be alone, I give myself that time, because I had to put my shit together and go through that first. So now I have to be like, okay, now this is the consequence. You know what I mean? So definitely very good quality, and it's something people should definitely have to think about more, learn more. As I said, I have dearest friends and family members that do that, and I have to tell them. Even my mom does that, and she's older, and you don't want your parents to have physical issues and health issues because of them being stressed all the time. So
yeah, it's one of the greatest things, I think, for me. Like, I hope actually that people who listen to this, maybe when they see you coming up, that they may be like, oh, this conversation is going to be about the new record, because that's probably what most of your press junket is going to be. But I hope when I have people on and they're willing to kind of get in the weeds with me at times with some of the shit and just kind of talking about real life things that we've all gone through, you know, maybe the way that we are looked at by most normal people who don't, you know, look the way we do or choose to look the way we do, maybe that part of the conversation, maybe someone might hear and go, oh, fuck, I do that sometimes. I do that to people sometimes, and I've never realized it. Or maybe someone will catch this last little bit that we've been talking about where it's like, you know, the change comes from within and you have to start there and then, you know, apply it outward. And it's crazy to see that when you kind of are able to do that and try to be the change you want to see in others with yourself, that it starts changing the rest of the world around you. Yes. And that maybe it will give, I don't want to say permission, but maybe it'll give someone hope that they can get resolve or answers that they've been long looking for to tackle the issues that they have themselves. So I know you got another one in 10 minutes. I'd like to give some people a reprieve to go to the bathroom or whatever, so they're not just a prison to this press junket. So thank you very much for taking the time and talking with me. And is there anything that you would like to plug online, your socials or anything?
Oh, yeah, I mean, our new record is coming out in January 7th, and it's our 5th album. We are super proud of it. So I invite everybody to not only give it a listen, but give it multiple tries. It's a very emotional and very raw album, more than ever. I mean, I think all our music kind of is, but this one is a lot. And please be very open-minded and give it multiple chances, multiple listens. Other than that, thank you for the support and thank you for this beautiful conversation we had for like an hour. It flew by. I can't believe it. It was an hour. Please send me this link so I can share it. We touched a lot of topics I try to write about and talk about with close fans and people on Patreon, on whoever, you know, is more interested in this aspect of, you know, me as a human being or me as an artist. So I'm very happy that you brought this up. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have you back on to talk about something, whatever else we get into at another time down the road, if you're a game.
Yes.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah.
You too. Thank you.
So that was my conversation with Lena, again, of Infected Rain. First and foremost, want to thank her for taking the time to have this conversation with me. It was one where, you know, I constantly say, you know, I never know where these conversations are going because I don't prep for them. I just, you know, we have a conversation. And I know a little bit of it started off, obviously, with the Every Time I Die conversation, which at the time of me recording this, I had literally just read what was going on. Obviously, a lot of people know it's my favorite band, and I know it may be awkward to kind of leave it in, but I realized that we were able to use that as a talking point about mental health and just kind of dynamics and social media and how perceptions kind of start formulating before we know anything, and public opinion and so forth. And it just was one of those where there really wasn't a way for me to cut that out to kind of not talk about something that we didn't need to talk about, because it gave birth to something that I thought was a great launching point for the conversation we had. And the places we took this conversation, you know, especially talking, you know, about, you know, Lena and the rest of Infected Rain kind of growing up in Moldova and not having, I don't want to say not having a community, but not having a feeling like they have a community like maybe we do here. I'm going to say just generalize here in the States, where we have these scenes, you know, these local scenes that are supporting of artists, whether they be musical artists or arts or whatever, any form of creativity. And to kind of be raised in an area where you don't feel that, I think is very interesting. It's not necessarily what I'm used to, and it's not necessarily the story I hear. So to see how Lena and her band have been able to persevere in spite of some of these things, I think is really interesting. You know, like I said, there's a documentary, and I have not looked it up, but I know that there's a documentary, and we've heard the stories, you know, going on, you know, such sites like Metal Sucks and so forth, sharing these stories of people in like Muslim countries and so forth, and that they literally are terrorists for playing metal. And it's just fucking wild to know that something that you do that inspires you, that gives you passion to be a creative person, that there's that people that in your country or wherever you live would look at it as something that should be illegal. It's just, it's baffling. And it really kind of goes to show how important being able to get these feelings out in some capacity. Even talking with Lena about, her service dog and the process of training her dog and all of the things that it has afforded her in her life and allowing her to grow and start moving forward with some traumatic experiences, I thought was also interesting and was one of those where, I definitely understand having, we're approaching, as of when I'm recording, we are literally a few days away from the third anniversary, I guess now, actually, of me having to put down my dog, literally on New Year's Day. And it's weird. It's one of the worst feelings ever, to this sense of loss. I assume it's exponentially worse with, close family members, but it's like, aside from your parents maybe, or a brother or a significant other, I feel like dogs are the ones that would be the hardest, because it's like they literally are like your everything. They're a part of your daily life. They are there for you, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And I know, at least for my dog with Allie, I got her when I was in my young 20s, and she was one of the first things that made me learn to put something else before me. She was around for some of the worst things I had gone through in relationships and in my personal life, was there for all the good things, made me smile, made me happy. And to lose that so unexpectedly was really tough. And there were a lot of firsts that you kind of go through, and you just don't know how much just even opening the door to your house and knowing that your best friend is on the other side. Like, I sat in front of my door for a solid 10 minutes with my hand on the handle, and I wouldn't open it because I knew if I opened it, then it was real. She was not on the other end of that door, and she never would be. It's shocking how much we love our pets, how much we love our friends. And I don't know. I know I didn't necessarily mean to make this intro and these outros kind of so heavy, but like I said, I've been thinking a lot more about the show and thinking a lot about the experiences of what I've been going through, and something I just kind of kept thinking of, and especially as I was going back and listening to an episode of Marin, WTF, I was thinking to myself that I love how he puts himself out there through whatever he's going through. But at times, someone may find that episode and find that intro and find the vulnerability of Mark and subsequently his guests as well. And they realize that they're not alone. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we really want. We don't want to be alone. No one wants to be alone. I mean, we say we do, but we don't. And I realized as I listened to some of these other things and the thoughts I have, I could make a real quick intro outro for this and it'd be fine. But I feel like because I already did that today, and then life shit happened, and then I kind of thought more about things, I realized maybe this is the opportunity I need to take to be more present for everybody that maybe listens, or continue on this path, I guess, of growth and I don't want to call it enlightenment, but it's something. Something's happening to me in the last 8 months since going to therapy, since kind of tapping into some of these things that I'm starting to notice a lot more. And I feel like at least if I maybe start being honest on this, that it will allow at least me to look back and see the progress, or kind of hold myself accountable maybe in some capacity, but that maybe it'll give you, the listener, permission to kind of start doing these things too. Man, what a way to end the year with this episode. Like I said, I didn't necessarily expect it to get so heavy. I will definitely say the next 2 episodes are kind of going to get that way. I know the one with Sean Z from X Chimera, Dath, Synesthesium, we get into some real shit in that conversation, and it's still stuck with me. And I think it's kind of why I'm doing this, actually. Kind of start wrapping this up. It feels kind of cheap to plug, socials and all that kind of stuff, but if you would like to keep up with Infected Rain, you can find them simply enough at infectedrain.com. That should be the landing page for everything you need to know about what they're doing, tour dates, socials, all that stuff. Pre-orders for their new album, again, coming out January 7th. If you would like to find them on Facebook, it's Facebook at Infected Rain, Instagram at Infected Rain_official, and Twitter at Infected Rain. If you would like to keep up with Lena, she has a Facebook. It is Facebook Lena Infected Rain, Instagram at Lena Scissorhands, and Twitter at Lena Scissorhand as well. Again, thank you so much for listening to this show, for sending me DMs, for making this year a really interesting year for me, where starting over was scary, but now I'm kind of getting to have all these firsts again, but they feel more important because I think people know what the show is. So to have these firsts all over, the first to 100, the first episode to 100, the first top 5 new episodes that weren't the same top 5 as before, the first time getting to 1,000, the first, 2,000 downloads and so forth. It feels like it means more because it means people give a shit. And that means a lot. So I thank you. Heading into this next year, we're going to kind of take some new risks. We're going to kind of go into some new territories, and I'm excited, and I'm a little bit nervous to kind of step out of the boundaries of what we're necessarily known for. But I think it's what's necessary. So for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I'll see you all next week with Sean Z. And I hope you have a great rest of your holiday weekend into your new year. We'll see you then.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were going to get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you. Don't use this fucking riff. It sucks.